Comic-Con, so we kind of assume everyone knows a ridiculous amount about the history of comics, and particularly the history of DC Comics. But this is the 75th anniversary of New Fun #1, first DC comic ever. Contrary to the press releases, I was not there at the time. I waited a little while after that to join. But let me introduce myself and introduce the extremely illustrious panel we have here. This is actually an extraordinary event because we've never had every living leader of DC save one sitting at a table before. That's the people who have really been responsible for your comics for the last 35 years now, and with any luck, maybe the next 35 years are here, as well as a couple of the most important creative figures in the field going back to the very beginning of comics. And let me go down the list here. Denny O'Neil. Jeanette Kahn. They're sneaking away from me. They're afraid of the questions already. We know that's one of your great colleagues. Mary Fran, are you here? Okay, just keep an eye on you. Jim Lee. Woo! Jerry Robinson. Ann Menio. Jeff Johns. And I'm basically here to try to suggest to all of you that you're really going to need to own Taschen's 75 Years of DC Comics, The Art of Modern Myth-Making. To show off the little book that is being completed to show this history and will be out in November. And I've had the privilege of hosting most of those years of DC, it feels like. Paul Levitz. And I have the privilege of operating. I know this audience has a lot of questions, and we will try to preserve a significant portion of our time to allow the questions. I also know this audience knows a ridiculous amount about what the history of DC is. So I'm going to ask our guests here really to try to talk about things that people don't know as much as humanly possible. To reveal the secrets. The manuscript's already turned in, guys. I can't incorporate the stuff. I'm not trolling in interviews. But let's talk about the turning points in DC's history. And between the audience, the gang we have assembled here, we've lived through a very high proportion of the important moments of DC's history. Jerry arrived really in the first seconds the company was young, it feels like. And as the ball got passed back and forth down the team, we've all been there for some of the truly great moments. What I'd like to invite you all to do is tell us something about a moment in unrecorded history. Something that was going on and that you'd like to share with the audience from the early moments of your coming to DC, either as a reader, a professional doing work, or just wandering through the office on some flimsy excuse. Because that's how most of us got there the first time. And let's start this one chronologically, Jerry. Let's begin the tale as close to the beginning as we can. You're our witness to the earliest history. Tell us something we don't know.
There's very little that you don't know. Well, as I say, I've been associated with DC in one way or another for 70 years or 75 years. Wow. DC. small compared to today, and it was very intimate, and we had a lot of cross-fertilization, let's say. At one time, in one small row, to my left was Jack Kirby and Joe Schuster. To my right was Fred Ray, and Morton Mesklin and George Russo. So I think we had a very good lineup, and it was small and very intimate. We would be able to collaborate very easily while we were doing our work. I think we learned from each other, we helped each other. If somebody was showing a deadline, and we didn't finish a cover, I remember Fred and I would design covers together. I would do the Batman, he would do the Superman figures. That sort of thing. It was very intimate. The other memory I have that stands out for some reason is when Citizen Kane first came out. It exploded on our scene. It really fired our imagination. Here on the screen, Orson Welles doing the kinds of storytelling and the kinds of suppression and expansion of time and the angles and to get into the meat of the story that we were trying to do on paper. You know, it was a new medium. We were kind of inventing methods, telling a story as we went along. And here we saw on the screen the kinds of things that we were trying to do, and we were excited when we heard that Orson Welles loved the comics and was influenced by the comics. We must have seen, I think I saw Citizen Kane about 17 times, and I think Fred Ray, who sat next to me on one side, saw it about 32 times. We knew the whole script word by word. And as I was drawing Batman and he was drawing Superman, we would be playing the parts of Citizen Kane. And as we were drawing, we knew every line. Xanadu down. And that's a good memory, and I think that kind of gives you the kind of atmosphere of the time.
So let's fast forward from the 1940s. Unfortunately, we're kind of underrepresented from the 1950s in this scene to the 1960s, and it's probably almost the height of the Vietnam War when Dick Giordano comes on board as an editor from Charlton Comics and brings with him a few wonderfully talented people who had never quite fitted into the DC scheme before, and Denny O'Neil.
I was told this morning that I wasn't speaking into the mic. I've mended my ways. As a kind of scruffy freelancer, I just thought DC was a closed shop. That was the impression I had. So when I went trolling for work, it didn't occur to me to go to DC. I didn't think there was any point in it. So when Dick brought a bunch of us over with him, I found myself there and found it a very congenial place to work and just a little uptight. Mostly people wore suits and ties, but and once Steve Skates and I were told not to pass the president's office, although his door was closed, because we weren't wearing a suit and tie. Presumably we would contaminate his corridor or something. But you want something to put that in perspective. A few years later, my young assistant, Kelly Booker, didn't always find it necessary to wear a shirt to work. But I found it very congenial, and then kind of casually and by accident, I was taken down the hall and introduced to Julia Schwartz. It has been one